Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So today we should be able to pull a new mystery card. We have 6 collector's reserves to unlock. If we don't get it in those 6, we do have more credits we can use, but I think we should get it within about 3 is what we've been averaging. So we are going to go ahead and pull a new card so that we can draft a deck around it. So let's go ahead and... So that is actually a three-peat card. 3 collector's reserves in a row, we have claimed a card. And so our card being Invisible Woman. Invisible Woman does a couple of things pretty well. So with the Hela deck that we ran previously, she offers a lot of good flexibility. She makes that deck a lot more consistent by being able to control when cards get discarded and when Hela triggers. And then she also has some cool use in decks that run like Ebony Maw, or even our Sandman deck where we flooded a lane, we had Ebony Maw, we used Sandman, we used Spectrum at the very end. You can drop some of those cards behind Invisible Woman. So let's say you drop your Spectrum behind Invisible Woman. On the last turn, once everything reveals, Spectrum will then flip, turn up, and will buff up all of your ongoing cards. And so she offers some pretty cool flexibility and some pretty cool utility, but I think her primary use is in a discard style deck. And so that is what we're going to go ahead and build. And so with the card pull out of the way, we are going to jump over into the deck build. All right, so we did end up drafting a deck with Invisible Woman and Hela. We did actually try a couple of different builds with this one because we wanted something that felt really consistent and really solid. Initially, we tried something with more high-powered minions. We tried one with an Ebony Maw and an Adam Warlock to try to get additional draws to increase the chance that we drew Hela into our hand, but they just didn't feel like they had enough power output to be competitive. And we even tried one with America Chavez to increase the chance that we drew into Hela by turn 5, but just none of them felt really solid. And so what we ended up going with was a less consistent draw line where we don't have any deck thinners, we don't have anything that's helping us draw into Hela more consistently, but as it is, we have a 75% chance of drawing into Hela by turn 6, which is good enough for us. That's 3 out of 4 games that we have a really solid chance of winning. And so then it just comes down to how do we play that power and how do we place it onto the board? We have a couple of different ways. Ideally, we're going to drop something like Invisible Woman, then Hellcow behind it, and Blade or another discard card, and then cap out that location with our Hela. But let's say we don't draw into our Invisible Woman. How do we still then push out enough power? Well, worst case scenario with this deck list, we can hold our cards until turn 5. We can drop Sarah. And then as long as we have Hellcow in our hand, we're going to be able to drop both Hela and Hellcow on turn 6 so that we can at least have 2 high-powered discard cards to resummon. So worst case scenario, we can have at least 2, but most likely we'll have probably 3 from Lady Sif. Then odds are we'll have Black Cat to resummon as well. So we have a lot more consistent power output with the Sarah Hellcow combo added into the Invisible Woman Hellcow Hela combo. And so running through the deck list really quickly, we have our discard cards, so cards that are going to cause us to discard other cards. We have Blade, which discards a random card. We have Lady Sif, who's going to target the highest cost card in our hand. That is almost always going to be Death, which is the main reason that we run Death in this list, because we can guarantee what card is going to be discarded. So even if we do have Hela in hand, we can still get a discard onto the board to resummon later. And then we have Hellcow, one of the best discard cards in the game. On reveal, Hellcow is going to discard 2 cards from our hand. So this is going to be really big to hit some of our higher power targets. And then we have Moon Knight to round out the discards. Moon Knight is going to discard a card from our hand and from the opponent's hand. So we can potentially mess up their play line while giving us some upside in the cards that we have discarded. Then a pseudo discard engine or discard card is our Black Cat. So if this is in our hand at the end of the turn, we discard it. More often than not, we're going to let Black Cat be discarded for another body to be resummoned by Hela later. Then we have our really large power cards in our Magneto, Giganto, Infinite Death, just the highest power cards that we have that we'll be able to resummon onto the board. And then of course the new addition of Invisible Woman, where we can hide our discard cards behind her. And so a couple of cards that we considered including were Iron Man to help elevate any given lane's power level whenever he's resummoned. resummoned, but this felt kind of inconsistent. Sometimes we needed guaranteed raw power, and Iron Man wasn't always able to offer that. Then we also considered adding in Captain Marvel here. Her ability to be resummoned onto the board and then move across the different lanes to find a place where she's able to win is a pretty good utility. It is pretty advantageous for this list, but the 6 power just didn't feel like enough consistency for what we were wanting to run. We considered adding in leader just for the randomness of the last turn. That way we could match whatever they play along with the cards we resummon. But again, he felt pretty inconsistent. Then if you're playing against somebody that's running a like destruction deck and they run a destroyer, then you might end up flipping your entire board by accident. We also considered adding in Dr. Doom here. Dr. Doom being able to add 5 power Doom bots to each of the other locations, but with the way Invisible Woman works, typically we're going to have Invisible Woman as the first card, Hellcow as the second, a cheaper card as like Blade as the third, and then capping it out with Hela. And so then even if Dr. Doom was resummoned, most likely he's only going to have room to play one of his Doom bots instead of both. And then as we mentioned, we also considered running something like an Ebony Maw and an Adam Warlock. That way we could get an additional draw, we could increase the chance that we had Hela in hand to be able to resummon our cards by the end of the game. But this just felt like too low tempo. It felt like it was forced, it didn't feel consistent, so we ended up cutting it. But that is the general idea of the deck list, that is the deck rundown. We are going to go ahead and jump into a few games and test it out. Okay, so next up we have Payul. And we do have Invisible Woman in our starting hand, so we know we're going to be able to play Invisible Woman to sneak in our discard cards. And I think we play her in the Bifrost. Now that I can read and got absolutely roasted for calling it Biofreeze, we're going to drop our Invisible Woman on the left-hand side. That way we can follow up with like a Blade or a Moon Knight, and even if it gets pushed with the Bifrost, we don't necessarily have to worry about it as much. And so drawing into cards with Asgard would be really, really great. Do we just play our discard cards here? We could potentially discard our Leech, our Moon Knight, but we have 2 really good targets. And so, I mean, at the very least, we're going to discard one of them. So even the lowest of rolls, we're going to get Moon Knight, Giganto, and Leech. And that's the absolute worst case scenario here. And so I think we go with that because we do want the additional draw from Asgard. And so we get almost the lowest roll, but not quite the lowest roll. They do have a Morbius, they have an Angela, and then they discard a Black Cat. Interesting. Oh, Ant-Man's created by the hub. Okay, that makes more sense. I was wondering what deck ran an Ant-Man in a discard deck. Anyways, we are going to pass here because we have Hela, we have Giganto. We don't have anything we can outright play. Oof. And so then they have a Wong here, and Wong gets pushed over into Asgard. And so from a discard standpoint, they're either going to be able to double up on like a Moon Knight discard. They're going to be able to, they have a lot of options in things that we may end up discarding. So if it's a Moon Knight, if it's a Gambit, then maybe they just destroy things that are already on the board. A lot of scary things here. So do we play our Sarah into our hand, or do we think they're maybe running a Moon Knight and they're going to end up trying to target our 2 of our cards in hand? I think that's really, it's a possibility, but I actually think it's a pretty good possibility, but I don't think we can play as if they have that. So instead, I think I'm just going to play our Sarah, hope that this is not a Moon Knight. We can fingers crossed. It's a collector. Okay. And so then they drop Hellcow, which doubles here because Wong got moved. And so they discard Swarm and Apocalypse. Okay. And then our Black Cat gets discarded. If we can draw into Lady Sif here, it would be really good. It'd be really good top deck. We don't. It's unfortunate. So all we have, not all we have an Infinite. So we have Infinite, we have one other card. I think we drop our Hela into Asgard. Hope that the Infinite goes here. Oof, this feels bad. If we get the Infinite, if we play here and get the Infinite here, that's great. If we get the Infinite here or here, that's okay. But if we don't play anything here in the hub and we get the Infinite, that could end up still being a loss. And so maybe we hide Hela behind Invisible Woman just in case they have like a gambit. I would think that they play their swarm and their apocalypse here instead, and so they do. So it really depends on where we resummon our cards. As long as Infinite does not go in the left hand side, we should be okay, depending on where it drops. Okay, so it dropped on the right hand side. If it came down to a coin flip, we had a three-sided coin. We had a 2 out of 3 shot at winning, depending on where the Infinite resummoned. And I was nervous. I was very, very nervous. All right, so before we jump into our next game, I did want to show, I know I mentioned it, but I didn't show, we got 3 card pulls back to back to back. And I think it's because we're so deep into the collection log before this change took effect that we're having extra good luck protection, or extra bad luck protection. So we're having more good luck, maybe. But either way, I'm okay with it. We have a lot. We have 5 unlocks left, and we have almost maxed out credits to pull some more cards. But we do want to cover what we've already pulled first. And so next up we have Saurian. And in our starting hand, we have 3 of our discard cards, but we're not going to drop them until we have better targets or we can guarantee what we can discard. So this turn, Lady Sif is a prime target. Ooh, and then we get Dark Dimension here. Just absolutely massive. We do draw into Hela, so Lady Sif is not a play we want to do. However, with Dark Dimension, cards here are not revealed, so this is a free Invisible Woman. And so we do have our discard cards. We're going to be able to hide them in Dark Dimension and then play our Hela to resummon them at the end of the game. Just absolutely phenomenal. So off of that, we did snap. I'm not sure if you guys saw it or not, but we did snap off of that because we are feeling fairly confident that we'll get some decent upside here. And so typically I would play our Lady Sif or another card here, but I don't want to get close to capping it out, just in case they have something like a Green Goblin, a Hobgoblin, something that would completely disrupt this, and I don't think they do, so we may play it this turn, but we did want to hold off at least one turn on it. And so we are going to play our Lady Sif and just hope that they don't have something like that, like a Debris. Debris would destroy us right now, because it would block us from being able to drop our Hela to reveal after the discard cards reveal. I almost want to do a 1 in 4, a 25% chance of failure, a 75% chance of success, because our Hellcow is going to discard 2, and so maybe it will target these, but there's a good chance that it will also target the blade. But I don't want to risk it this late in the game, so we are going to hold our blade, but it was tempting to drop. And so now they have a Yondu. I bet they have some form of like death or something similar. So we're gonna go ahead and drop our Hela. I'll always wonder what if we needed that extra card discarded, but we're gonna play our Hela and let it roll out. It's a random shot. It's all down to the coin flip and where our cards go, where they get resummoned at. And so they drop a Killmonger, which destroys the 1-cost cards to trigger their Nova buff across the board. But that just doesn't seem like a lot of power output. They did stack quite a bit in Central Park, but so we got the good upside from Hela. Now Lady Sif is going to target our Giganto because that is the highest cost card. And then of course our Hela will resummon them. I don't think there's any way we could get bad luck enough where we would lose this game. Even if they all summoned in one location, I don't think it could be bad enough. And so they did. Like none of them went into Central Park. Like the odds, the chances of them stacking in one lane is like abysmal. But even though we didn't get a good roll on where they were resummoned, our Magneto was able to pull their cards over. We were able to stack enough power that it's really hard to compete with 69 power. All right, so next up we have Kennedy. And in our starting hand, we do have Black Cat that's going to discard itself. We have Hela as well. And so then drawing into the X-Mansion, that adds quite a bit of variability because it could end up doing something like a discard card. It could do any number of things. And so now we have our Blade, we have Moon Knight. I think we risk it one time here. They may be playing a collector or a discard style deck. They are, unfortunately. So we are going to cause them to at least trigger their swarm once. What bad luck. And so then X-Mansion comes in. Can we get an angel? Okay, so starting out, we do draw into Olympia, and I'm not sure if this is human or not, but we do have our blade. We don't have any necessarily bad targets for it to hit here. Ideally, it would not hit our Black Cat or our Sarah. Any other card is great, and then unfortunately it does hit our Sarah. So we're not going to get the upside of being able to drop Sarah and then something like Hell Cow and Hela, but it might be all right. And then if this mirror dimension turns into Olympia, we're going to get really deep into our deck. We should have no problem getting our Invisible Woman or our other large cards here. And so we do get Invisible Woman. And so it either has a chance to turn into the Icebox, where then it will increase the cost of one of our cards by 1, or Olympia. If it's the Icebox, it doesn't really hurt us because we're not planning on playing any of these cards naturally anyways. But if it turns into Olympia, that is ideal. Oh, unfortunate. Super unfortunate. And so we actually don't need to hide Hell Cow here because we don't have Hela in hand. And it may give our hand away just a little bit with them knowing that we don't have Hela. And so they do steal our ongoing ability with their Rogue. And so our Invisible Woman is not going to hide cards anymore. A move that I really enjoyed using whenever I ran Rogue. But there's not as many really good ongoing abilities anymore. And so then we do discard our cards. So luckily we didn't have Hela in our hand and we didn't need to hide our cards because they would have just absolutely massacred that. And so we are going to drop our Moon Knight here, and we just have to hope that we draw into our Hela. We have a 50-50 shot. We are so deep in our pool, we have a 50-50 chance of drawing into our Hela here. And if not, okay, so we do. So if not, the other card that we had in hand was Lady Sif, which would not have done us any good, I believe. And so now, where do we resummon these cards? So they have 15 power here. We could do Hela, even if it resummons Black Cat here, that should be fine. And then we leave space for our higher power cards to be resummoned in the Icebox. I think that's how we want to go with it. And so we are going to go ahead and lock that in. They only drop one card, and that's the Destroyer. And so we do know that we are winning, I guess, none of the lanes. No, because their Colossus stays in place. And so it's a pretty good play line. We are now winning mid. With our Magneto, we're winning left. We do resummon our Sarah and then our Infinite. And so we do lock down all 3 lanes here. Very, very lucky. It came down to a 50%, just a heads or tails for that last card draw because we have 1 card left in our deck. So very lucky that we drew and were able to draw Hela that late into the game. Okay, so next up we have Yates Soto. And we do draw into our Lady Sif here, which we're able to drop on turn 1 to discard either our Infinite or our Magneto. And so we're setting up a pretty impressive play here. We just have to draw into the right resources. We already have 1 large card taken out with Infinite, which is always, even just by itself, is a good resummon on the last turn. If we can get additional ones, then all the better. And so here we do draw into Death. And so if we don't draw into our Hela next turn, then I think the chances of us dropping Moon Knight are going to be really, 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 really good, depending on what we draw. If we draw into Invisible Woman, maybe we play that instead, but just depends on what we draw. So they drop a Morbius, and so we know that they're wanting to discard cards. So that always makes Moon Knight feel pretty bad, and we're most likely going to lose against the Morbius lane, so maybe we stack it into Xandar to start distributing our power elsewhere. And we are going to go ahead and go with the Moon Knight. I think we will get more upside out of making sure we discard one of our cards versus them discarding. Ooh, okay, we do get some solid upside in them discarding their Wong, which they were, as a discard deck, they were wanting to drop the Wong so that they could then double discard with things like Hell Cow or Blade or Gambit to do the double destruction as well. But they're not going to be able to. And so we are going to drop our Invisible Woman. It doesn't matter if we drop her in the middle or the right, unless they change it here, because we are going to get sent over with the Bifrost. I'm never going to see that location without having a little bit of anxiety about reading it incorrectly or correcting it incorrectly. And so they do drop Dracula, which is pretty scary. But we have Hellcow, and we can discard our cards without any problem. We don't have to hide it behind Invisible Woman. Because the Dracula lane's probably going to be pretty large, I think we just play our Hellcow outright. And then coming into that last turn, we have a 25% chance of drawing Hela. I think if we draw Hela, we snap to try to scare them off, because they're going to see that we have discarded 3 or 4 really large cards. So we've discarded the Infinite, we've discarded something with Moon Knight. Was it Giganto? Do we have all of our large cards discarded? And so then they do have their Hellcow, so they drop their Apocalypse a couple of times, and their Swarm. Okay, and so we draw into Blade.
Oh, snap.
The most intimidating blade I've ever seen. Hey, next up we have Davy Masta, and it's been a while since we've seen Davy, and so I'm glad that we're matching up again. I hope that we have a good match here. And so in our starting hand, we have Moon Knight, we have Hellcow, we have Death and Infinite. Depending on what we draw here, we may play our Hellcow, but with the Sarah combo, it's a lot sneakier to be able to drop our Hellcow on the very last turn. I think we wait one turn. If we don't draw into our Hela here, maybe we just play Moon Knight. That feels risky as well, because then we could potentially discard our Hellcow. I think we just play it patiently. That's tough. I want to be playing cards. We have some cards that we can play, but I think the name of this deck is Patience. It's actually IW for Invisible Woman, but I think to pilot this deck well, you need patience. You need to make sure you're playing into your odds and playing into your favors. And so they have Wave here. Interesting. I don't know what they're waving into, but that gives us the ability to just drop our Infinite here, which I think we do. I don't think we pass up the opportunity to just drop an Infinite onto the board since we happened to pass last turn. So then if they have an Odin, we're also going to have some upside in like a Death, or maybe even a little bit less or so in like a Sarah. Ooh, so it's an Onslaught. Oh no. Okay, so I think knowing that they have an Onslaught, they're wanting to do some really cool ongoing combo. What we're gonna do is drop our Moon Knight and hope that it targets something of theirs that they don't want to be destroyed. And then I think we play the Moon Knight here, and we play Hellcow here. I anticipate that they maybe drop an Iron Man here this turn, or maybe a Claw, something that's going to distribute that power. Or they could be going for the ultimate combo, so they would drop a Wong, but the Squirrel limits their ability to do so. So I think they may be going for Exodia here. Usually when you see Onslaught first, that's a pretty high likelihood. And so we're going to hit Moon Knight, hope that it triggers what they're wanting to drop in like a Gambit or something, so their Mystique, which is good. If they had enough space, that would save us quite a bit. But because they weren't going to be able to drop Mystique anyways, they are going to be able to do, let's say it's a Gambit. They drop, we have priority here. We can pull Wong away. We'll pull him the Wong direction. I think we pull him to the right, because I think they probably drop a card there. Actually, yeah, I think they probably drop a card there and then maybe a card in Central Park. I think they give up on Kunlun, and so I think we pull him over to the right here. And so we do initiate. We are pulling their Wong and their Wave away, and so if this is a Gambit, it's only going to trigger once, and so they have to get really lucky with this upside here. Oh boy, and they do. Davey, why you gotta do us dirty like that? Oh no. So had we played our Magneto to the left instead, we would have pulled their Wong that direction. Colossus here wouldn't have been enough to win Central Park. I forgot about pulling Wave. It still came down to a coin flip, but I forgot that our Magneto was going to pull Wave. There was so many targets that it could have hit. We gave ourselves the best possible chance in this scenario. except if we had dropped Magneto here instead. But overall, a very good game, Davy Masta. I can't be mad. I can't be mad about it. We did what we could do, and then we just learn from it next time and play it just a little bit better. Next up, we have Atoms, and in our starting hand, we do have our Lady Sif and Death, so we're going to be able to target that card. And so I think we drop it into the big house because we know we're not going to be able to do our Invisible Woman, Hell Cow, and Hela in the big house, so we need to drop it in one of the other 2 lanes here. And so we are going to play our Lady Sif. It's going to discard our Death, and then we start setting up our Invisible Woman here. So they drew a Koye, depending on what this location is. Not great for us, but not terrible either. So we're not going to get the benefit of having our cards buffed over time, except for Invisible Woman if we played her there. So I think instead we're going to set it up into the sewer system. That feels bad also. We're going to do it into Muir Island instead. We changed our mind. We're going to do it into Muir Island. That way our larger cards, when we do discard them, have a chance to be resummoned in the sewer system, which is much more advantageous for us. And so we're going to go ahead and drop our Hell Cow. Next turn, we will probably end up passing, being turn 5, unless we draw into Sarah. If we draw into Sarah, maybe we play it. Or if we draw into Moon Knight, then we drop that into Muir Island, or into Blade. Then we drop that into Muir Island. So we go ahead and drop our Blade. Next turn, we do get Hela. So hopefully we draw into one of our large cards, so like a Magneto or an Infinite. Infinite is going to be the primary one that we want to draw into here, because we know we're not going to win in Muir Island because they have so many cards there already. With this combo, we're only going to push, I believe it's 15. It's either 15 or 17 power that way, minus any Muir Island buffs that we get. And so we do draw into Sarah here, which is not great. We can potentially win, and since it's 2 cubes, if this was worth 4 or 8, we would end up leaving this game because we don't have we don't have 3 or 4 of our large minions to resummon here. We're gonna have 2 large minions guaranteed, a mid-sized minion and 2 mid-sized minions as well. And so as long as one goes into the sewer system, though, we are okay. So they dropped more resources into Muir Island. I guess they thought we were going to be trying to push high power cards there, but we are not. And so I think no matter where these cards resummon, unless all 3 of our we have 4 discard cards. So as long as it doesn't resummon really poorly into the sewer system, so if our Black Cat is the only thing that gets pushed into the sewer system, we would lose. But we get lucky that we don't get the downside of having just our Black Cat there. It would have had to been really, really bad luck, but it could have happened where everything else except for either Black Cat or Sarah summoned here, and then we would have been left losing in the sewer system. But we were able to barely squeak that one out, thanks to our Invisible Woman and our Hell Cow. Not the best power dispersion, but not bad either. All right, so with that win out of the way, we are going to go ahead and end this video here. I dropped down to rank about 101 from trying to breed decks, and I've climbed back up to about 106 with this Hela deck, and it feels very, very good. A lot of times you can get 8 cube wins, because if we haven't discarded anything by turn 4, by turn 5, and we don't have an Invisible Woman on the board, and we set up a Sarah play, they're not anticipating a double discard into a Hela on the same turn, so it can really sneak some of that power back onto the board and surprise the opponent. So this deck list feels really, really fun. I do enjoy this one so much. I enjoyed Hela before we had Invisible Woman. And so Invisible Woman has just made it feel all the more consistent. This deck list is able to push out a lot of power very quickly and very consistently. And so I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment down below. I do enjoy responding, reading all of the comments, and responding to as many as I can. And I promise I will get caught up eventually, but I'm just trying to knock them out a few at a time before I get pulled away. But I still enjoy reading and seeing all of the responses, all of the feedback, and all of the outpouring of positivity. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am going to go ahead and end the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.